Something that I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned that when you were growing up, you didn't really see yourself as Japanese because you said you had 1 foot in and 1 foot out, like meaning 1 foot in Japan and 1 foot in the U.S. Like when you were a kid, how did you imagine the U.S.? Like you said, you didn't really remember too much of when you were living there up until you were 8. So like, what did you have in your mind that the U.S. represented? Like, did that feel like, oh, my home is over there, or did it feel like a foreign country, or how did you picture it?
It was kind of a struggle at times because like we did come back to visit the United States a few times, and every time I came back, it felt foreign. It felt very weird. It was a very odd feeling to come back to a place that like is my homeland, right? And then feel uncomfortable. I felt like the people used different slang than I did everywhere because I didn't have a slang that was like native to a specific area, you know? Like there was a lot of words that they were using. I remember I went to California when I was 17 and people were saying degaff. I had no idea what that meant. People were quoting Family Guy. People were talking about the latest South Park episode, and like all of these cultural things were moving really, really quickly, and I wasn't there for it. So I just didn't feel like I fit in all the way there. And this is before social media was a big deal. And I think social media has opened broadens people's horizons to the rest of the world. And when I would come back to visit, if we came back to Indiana, where I was born and where my family's from, I met a lot of people that just never had left the city that they were from and been there their entire life. So they'd say things like, oh, you live in Japan. That's crazy. You speak Chinese? And like just completely dead serious. Like, oh, do they carry samurai swords there? It was just like, oh, I can't relate to you anymore because like we live two completely different lives in that way. Not that I hated them or anything. And it was so different too. Like the smells were different. The cars were huge. The cars here travel really, really fast compared to Japan. So I remember getting off the airplane, getting into my grandmother's car when she picked us up from the airport, and we're just flying down the road. Felt like we were going to die. So coming back to that was a little weird. And so I did struggle with that for a while. And like I said, my family moved back to the United States and I stayed in Japan. And I tried to swing it out there and tried to go to college and didn't want to go to college and ended up coming back to the US for college. And my plan was always to go back to Japan because I felt like that was my home, because that's where all the important stuff happened. That's where all of my friends were. That's where all my experiences were. That's where I was the most comfortable. And that's where everybody was telling me to come back to. Like, hey, after you're done with school, make sure you come back. Now that I've been back in the United States for such a long time, I still feel torn. I feel a little bit different than the people that I talk to every day. And I hate going through I think, what do they call it? Third culture kids? Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Third culture kid experience is very similar in this regard. It's one that I hate when somebody says, hey, where are you from? And I don't want to go through the whole, like, I lived here and I grew up in Japan, and then I have to answer the same exact questions over and over again. Not that I want like to be mean, but it's the same exact, and then we never make it past that surface level. I always say the same exact things to the same people when I meet them for a short period of time. So I never make it beyond a self-introduction. Yeah. And I don't want to take the attention off of something else. If like I'm at a party that's for somebody else, like I'm just a regular person. I just happen to live somewhere else. So that's also very difficult. So I think it's less apparent now that I've been here longer, because now I understand the nuances of certain things people are saying, and I understand the cultural stuff that I'd missed, and I'm a part of the culture that's now evolving. But when I was missing that and I was coming back and seeing that it had changed since I had left, that was a pretty big culture shock. Probably more than moving to Japan to begin with in some ways, because I was like, well, this is where I'm supposed to be, and I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here anymore. And now I'm confused. Yeah,
like there's some expectation that you're American, so you should fit in with other Americans and live an American lifestyle. And I mean, the third culture kid, that idea, if I'm not mistaken, would be like the country where you were born, or sometimes where your parents are from, like if you were born abroad. Would be one of those cultures. Then the other culture would be the country where you grew up. And then the third culture would be the unique blend of those two together. And so I think the third aspect of the third culture kid would describe that feeling of maybe not necessarily feeling like you fit in Japan, but then also not feeling like you fit in the US completely. That in between culture. Like, is that how it feels for you, that you don't really fully fit in either place?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel more comfortable in Japan in many ways than I do in the United States. But yeah, I would agree with that. Especially because when we came back from Japan, I always thought my family is like the most American family. We're all super pasty. Like my parents didn't really speak Japanese, so I was constantly translating for, like, if something went on with the house and we had to go talk to the landlord or take the dog to the vet or go to the doctor, I was always translating, which is why I really do feel for like kids that are translating for their parents in the US and they get embarrassed. I want to pull them to the side and be like, yo, I know exactly what that feels like. I know it sucks, but it'll be okay. Because I did the same exact thing. I was always embarrassed. But I didn't realize how much culture we brought back until I invited a friend over for food one time, and we were having like a Japanese meal that we had all the time in Japan, and they'd never eaten it before. I remember thinking like, what do you mean you haven't eaten this? Like, we eat this all the time. And then it like kind of hit me like, oh, well, this is Japanese food. This isn't American food. Okay, so maybe we did bring some certain things back. And then I look around my parents' house and there's like certain Japanese artworks on the wall, like certain Japanese branded clothing and things like that people hadn't seen before. I'm like, oh, well, maybe we did kind of bring Japan into our actual house itself. Maybe we just spoke English inside the house and had some other things.
Like, in comparison to Japanese people, you guys probably were super American, but in comparison to, like, you know, someone who never left the US, then that's maybe where you'll see the difference. Like, that gradual change over time, you don't see how much you're adapting. Because I do feel like people want to adapt. I think it's like a human need almost to fit in. And when you're in an environment for a while, you just start to take on those, you know, habits or food or whatever. It's like if you're hanging out with your friend and they use a certain word a lot, and then you start using that word. Like, we don't think about that, right? It just happens because we just want to fit in. It's like our evolutionary necessity or something. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's even small things. Like, we take our shoes off before we come in the house. A lot of Americans do not do that. It's very irritating. And like, yeah. I'll see people just walk on their carpet with their sneakers that they were wearing outside. And I'm like, well, dude, you brought in all that dirt into my house. That's crazy. And they'll do it in their own house.
I don't get that because in Canada, everyone takes their shoes off. It's like a Canadian thing. So like, as well. And so like, I didn't even like, when I heard that some Americans don't do that, I was like, but what do you mean? Like, it's dirty outside. You're like,
some Americans
you're gonna sit on the couch
mad
with your shoes.
Some Americans get uncomfortable if you take your shoes off because they're like, I don't want to smell your feet. So they don't want you to take your shoes off. And there have been so many times, especially in Indiana, where I go to somebody's house and I go to take off my shoes and they tell me, oh, no, you don't have to take your shoes off. And I look at them like, actually, I do. I'm sorry. I can't walk on your, it feels wrong. So I think that, you know, being in Japan, I was like, I'm not Japanese. I'm not anywhere close. I'm just like a visitor here for a extended period of time, basically. But then, you know, coming back, like I won't stick my chopsticks directly into my food and just leave it sitting there. I'll take my shoes off before I go certain places. You know, when I meet a Japanese person in public, often there's like a switch that's just flipped, and all of a sudden, instead of shaking hands, I'm bowing immediately. There's no confusion about anything. So I feel like, maybe it did tag along with me in some way. My wife points it out more than I do. I don't notice it half the time. But my big struggle here right now is ordering Japanese food in the United States, because almost no Japanese restaurants near me are owned by Japanese people, and most people that work there are American. And I don't know how they say the Japanese foods because I only learned it in Japanese. Okonomiyaki. That's how I know that word. I don't know how Americans say it. I haven't heard Americans say it. So I will point at something and act like I don't know what the word is. I'll say, I'll have that. Oh, okonomiyaki? I'm like, yeah, there you go. That's what I want. That's what I want. Takoyaki.
However you say it, I'll take that one.
Yeah, however you say it. I don't want to sound pretentious or anything like that. So it's hard because I did not know that word outside of how a Japanese person would say it, because that's how it was taught to me.
Yeah, because people get so much flack for that, right? Like, there's that whole meme of like, oh, the person that says croissant, like, you know, they should just say croissant like everyone else, and because you're trying to act pretentious. But I think for me, I mean, my own personal rule, I guess, is like, if you actually speak the language, it's not pretentious. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you speak French and you say croissant however you're supposed to actually say it, then it's not pretentious because you're not putting something on that isn't actually a part of you. But like if I tell people that I speak Tagalog, I don't want to say, they say Tagalog, right? They say Tagalog. I don't want to say Tagalog, and I don't want to sound pretentious by saying Tagalog. So I'll say Filipino. Like most of the time I'll revert and just say Filipino because it's another accepted way to say it. But I also don't want people to judge me and be like, oh, Tagalog. Like I'm also sensitive to that. But yeah, but my rule, and I don't know if you agree, if you speak the language, I think it's never pretentious.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with that, but my caveat is if it's a commonly used word, like croissant is a very commonly used word, and it's not something that you would not come across outside of France, that makes sense to me that somebody would say croissant instead of croissant, With Japanese words that I struggle with, I'll say ramen instead of ramen. I'll say Tokyo instead of Tokyo because it's very common words. Okonomiyaki, katsudon, like andagi, like these words I don't know because they're so uncommon in the United States that it's difficult for me to try to andagi's Okinawan, but it'd be really hard for me to come up with a way to say it on the spot. So I think in that regard, if it's an uncommon word, I'm going Japanese every time.